Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a nahjahum ila yawmiddin. Afterwards, inshallah, we are going to proceed with our discussion from the book of Ibn Bassam, Taisirul Allam, in the Kitabus-Siyam. And for this session, we are going directly to the hadith. The first one is that of the narration of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, of whom we have done with the introductory part of it. So al-hadith al-awwal, the first hadith. So someone can ask, what is hadith? So from the Vedic definition given by the ulama of Mustalah al-hadith, is that, as we know, كل ما أضيف إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من قول أو عمل أو تقرير أو صفة خلقية أو خلقية. So these are some of the broadly and the basic, that is a definition given by the ulama of Mustalah al-hadith, of whom there are some of the synonymous words related to the definition of sunnah and the definition of hadith, and also definition of al-khabr and the definition of al-athar, for example. So whenever we talk about hadith, it's whatsoever that was attributed to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam of utterances, actions, or affirmation, or any kind of description of his behavior, that is his mode of conduct, and also his nature. So this is in a kind of brief explanation. So the first hadith that he mentioned here, an Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, an Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, from the authority of Abi Hurairah. We know the original name of Abi Hurairah is Abdurrahman bin Sakhr ad-Dawsi. He was from the tribe of Ad-Daws. So we know attributing oneself to a particular tribe, there is no problem with that. It's something that was from the creed of the righteous predecessors. Even to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was named, or he was attributed to Quraysh, to Bani Hashim, al-Qurashi al-Hashimi, for example. So when Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu arrived to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked about his name, and he said that my name is Abdushams. Abdushams, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, he said, Bal Abdullah. Then he said, Bal Abdurrahman. Then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam named him with that name, and he accepted. It's just a kind of correction from the name. And we know the Almighty mentioned bi'sal ismul fusuq ba'd al-iman. So bad it is, so evil it is, the name of indecency after the name of faith. So like for example, changing of name, as we know, someone can do it through the newspapers, through whatsoever platform he wants. But when we are talking about the issue of theology, so it is something greater, and it is something that is related to the faith. So his nickname is Abi Hurairah. That is his nickname, and he was among the narrators of a lot of the hadith. As we know, almost more than 6,600 hadith that was narrated by Abi Hurairah. So if you exclude Abi Hurairah, Abdullah ibn Umar, Jabir bin Abdullah, Anas bin Malik, Aisha radiallahu anha, all this, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhum ajma'in, you would see the remaining Sahaba, they narrated some of the hadiths that are not to the numbers of the hadiths narrated by these companions of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Messenger of Allah, peace and mercy of Allah be upon him, mentioned, لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين. لا تقدموا رمضان. لا تقدموا رمضان. Do not free fast Ramadan بصوم يوم أو يومين, with a fasting of a day or 2 days. So there is a kind of concern here. لا تقدموا. It is not mentioned لا تتقدموا. There are some of the differences of which we would discuss about it. That is further. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned لا تتقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين. Do not free fast the month of Ramadan with a fasting of a day or 2 days. Meaning before the month of Ramadan, do not perform any kind of fasting, whether it's of 1 day, of a single day, or 2 days. Meaning you should not connect the month of Sha'ban with the month of Ramadan. So this is the literal basic aspect of the hadith. So let us listen from the lessons from the explanation and the commentary of Ibn Bassam, Abdullahil Bassam. He says that al-gharib, the vocabs, that is the vocabulary that is building in the hadith, that is the vocabs, and that's one of the issues. Before you understand any ayah or before you understand a hadith, you have to know the lugha aspect of it, and also you have to refer to the viewpoint of the righteous predecessors before giving explanation, before that is giving any kind of commentary or interpretation to that ayah or to that hadith. So al-gharib, that is the vocabs, the vocabulary building in the hadith. لا تتقدموا, one of the phrase in the hadith, one of the word لا تتقدموا, لا تقدموا, لا تقدموا, do not free fast, meaning do not go before. بفتح التاء والدال, with the fatha, given fatha, annotation of fatha on top of the ta and also on top of the dalun. These are the alphabet, so you have to put fatha. This is a kind of intonation, for example. So if you give fatha to the ta'un and to the dalun, taqaddamu, taqaddamu, instead of tuqaddimu, or that is tiqaddimu, but taqaddamu with fatha on top of the ta'un and on top of the, that is dalun, because if you put any, that is ruf'a or jarra or for example jazma, the meaning can change, and that's how the language is. That's how that is the language is. So the moment you change any alphabet, or you change a consonant letter, or you change a vowel letter, definitely the intonation, the meaning, anything can get changed from that particular phrase or from that particular sentence. So likewise, على حذف تاء المضارعة, by erasing the تاء المضارعة. We know what is مضارع, that is our present tense or future tense. So in terms of lugha, we have فعل ماضي, that is فعل ماض, we have فعل مضارع and فعل أمر, that is the tense which is the past tense, that is the present tense, and also the tense that come in a form of command. So on the fi'l mudari', fi'l mudari' is categorized into basically two categories: present tense and future tense. And we know also we have present continuous tense and we have the normal present tense. So likewise, if you are talking about the past tense, fi'l madi, there would be that is our present that is our past tense and past participle. So these are the issues that we would understand here. على حذف تاء المضارع, by erasing the ta the ta'un of mudari. So ta'un is an alphabet of mudari. For you to understand this tense is mudari, for you to understand this is a kind of present tense or future tense, for example, there are some of the alphabets of which you would recognize it with it. In the field of an-nahwu, we know that fi'l al-mudari' has around 4 alphabet normally, of which you can accumulate that by the saying anaytu, to make it simple. Anaytu, that is hamza, nunun, ya'un and ta'un. These are the 4 alphabet of mudari. So whenever a tense begins with a-ta' or al-hamza or nunun or ya'un, this is fi'l al-mudari. As we know, fi'l al-mudari هو كل فعل يدل على حصول عمل في زمن الحاضر أو المستقبل. So this is the fi'l al-mudari. So if you erase the ta'un, tataqaddamu, you erase the ta'ul mudari, that is the first ta'un. So the phrase would be, the word would become taqaddam. So if you erase the ta'ul mudari'ah, taqaddam, so meaning taqaddam, it is talking about future tense. Do you get it? If you remove the ta'ul mudari'ah. But if you attach the ta'ul mudari'ah, meaning you are talking about the present tense. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he mentioned is that do not do it in the future, meaning do not pre-fast the month of Ramadan with the fasting of a single day or 2 days before the month of Ramadan. You see, the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is talking about future tense. Do you get it? So that's the reason why you have to pronounce taqaddamu, not tataqaddamu. You see so many ulama, mashayikh and the tullab al-ilm in this kind of hadith, they used to mention tataqaddamu, of which it is a wrong statement in the field of lugha. It is a wrong statement. So you have to pronounce taqaddamu. Allahu al-musta'an. La taqaddamu. If you pronounce la tuqaddimu, it is wrong also. It is wrong also. So لأن أصله لا تتقدم, because the word origin is لا تتقدم with the word of with the ta'ul mudari'ah. So do you get it? Yeah. So let's go further. المعنى الإجمالي, the entire meaning, the general meaning in the hadith. الشارع الحكيم يريد التمييز بين العبادات والعادات. The wise legislator decided to differentiate between acts of worship and culture. That is, to differentiate between constant habitual acts and that which is part of the obligatory mandates. So the wise legislator decided to differentiate between al-ibadat wal-adat. If we are talking about al-ibadah, meaning the act of worship, that which the Almighty commanded the servant should do, of which it is a kind of either in the form of mandate or in the form of voluntary, or something that is of culture. So you have to differentiate between culture, that is tradition, that is culture, and worship, al-ibadah. You have to differentiate between al-ibadah and adat. If you are not able to differentiate between al-ibadah and adat, then you may be in a kind of serious condition. How? Because you may end up doing something of thinking that is ibadah, and it is not ibadah, but rather it is al-adah. It is part of al-adat. Or you would do al-ibadah by considering it as al-adat. So this one, you have to differentiate between al-ibadah and al-adat. Like for example, the mode of dressing. Dressing is al-adat and also it is al-ibadat. And there are form of al-ibadats and dressing, and also there are form of that is that is al-ibadat. Al-adat can be in the dress, and ibadat can be in anything, in the meal, in the food, in everything. In education there would be al-adat and there would be al-ibadat also, like wearing the cap, the turban. These are, that is al-adat, and subsegment al-ibadat also, and likewise. So al-ibadat would come on the utterances of the messengers from the divine legislation, while al-adat is anything that is common between certain individuals or between a particular community. So that's why, as we know, culture is the way, the people's way of living. That is their way of life. It comprises their food, mode of dressing, their language. This is al-ada, for example. So your culture would differ with someone's culture, and my culture can be different with your own, for example. So to have a kind of mode of understanding, we have to differentiate between culture and that is ibadah. So in ibadah we can get united, but in culture everyone has his own culture, for example. So your way of dressing, for example, can differ with someone's way of dressing, but since that I understand this is just a culture, I can dress in any mode of dressing which will not violate the al-ibadat, for example. Likewise, in any behavior, I can eat varieties of dishes, meal and anything, for example, and that's how it is, because it is part of al-adat, for example. So but if you are talking about al-ibadat, we know it is as I mentioned earlier previously, اسم جامع لكل ما يحبه الله ويرضاه من الأعمال والأقوال الظاهرة والباطنة. And beside this also, for ibadah to get accepted, it must to contain, you must to attach the ibadah with two factors, of which one is al-ikhlas and second one al-mutaba'ah. These are the two basic factors. So the wise legislator decided to explain, to enunciate, to enumerate, to differentiate between the concept of al-ibadah and the concept of al-adat. ويريد أن يميز فروض العبادات ونوافلها. And also he decided to differentiate between the forms of ibadat, the obligatory ones and the nawafiliha, the voluntary ones. So if we mention, or if we say that this is obligatory, meaning this is a compulsory act, this is mandatory, you must do it. If you fail to do it, you would be recorded with a sin, meaning you did something that is wrong, and the Almighty can punish you with due failure in performing that. And if you say something is voluntary, means something that you are the one that desires to do it, you have the option either to do it or not. It is voluntary, and a voluntary act can be rewardable also. And if you did not do it, there is no blame on you, but the only thing is that you miss huge amounts of rewards. So you have to also know about the classification of ahkam, like al-fara'id, as-sunnah, that is as-sunan, as-sunnah. You have to know to differentiate between al-makruh, al-mandub, for example, and you have to know how to differentiate between, that is what we know, khilaf al-awla also. And you have to, these are the basic that you will learn in the, that is usul al-fiqh, for example. So you have to know the classification of the ahkam, al-fara'id, as-sunan, you have to know, that is the sunnah, you have to know that which is obligatory, which is recommended, reprehensible, all these 5 classes, unless if you are khawarij, unless if you are among the kharijites. You know, the kharijite, they said all these classifications are just politics. Billah. So you have to know this in order to understand that is your deen. So for you to understand your deen, you have to know all the ahkam, the rules and regulation. Otherwise you would go into something, doing something of which you are thinking you are right, but you are totally wrong on it. So that's one of the issues. We should try as such to understand some of the common terms. So that's it. Because if you did not understand these basics, you will not be able to identify, to isolate the benefit, the importance, and the lessons within the hadith. And that's why you would see the righteous predecessors, they published so many articles, so many books, volumes related to fiqh hadith, for example. And also in terms of the ayat, in terms of the issue of at-tafasir, issue of an-nasikh wal-mansukh, sabab al-nuzul, for example, in the field of ulum al-Quran. And that's how it is in any field, for example. And that's why even to any segment, any sector, any field, there are terminologies. You cannot understand, you cannot use the law terminology in medical, that is aspect. You cannot use medical terminology in the field of law, for example. So all this you have to differentiate at times, and that's the reason why he differentiated the issues here. You have to differentiate between obligatory and voluntary. You have to differentiate between that is culture and that is worship. So and that's one of the issue, and that's what he has done in the commentary. And he says that ليحصل الفرق بين هذا وذاك. So the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam decided to enumerate these issues, to explain these issues in order ليحصل الفرق بين هذا وذاك, in order the differentiation to occur, in order to differentiation to happen between that and this, between this and that. So that's the wisdom behind the enunciations, the differentiation. Rasulullah has highlighted the differences between al-ibadat and al-adat, and the differences between obligatory and voluntary. So in order to know the differences between this and that, indeed you have to know the differences. That's why even today so many people are calling for unity or something like that. Yes, it is something that is welcome, but you have to know the differences before getting united. If you get united without knowing the differences, then that unity is bound to get broken. And that's how it is. You have to know the differences in order to weigh the issues on the scales, and that's it. You have to know. If you know the differences, then you have to know in something that you need to volunteer. If you did not do it, no blame on such person. And something that it is obligatory, you must do it. If you fail to do it, then you would get recorded with a sin, and that's one of the issues. You have to know the differences. You have to listen. You have to, that is, listen before you judge. If you judge before listening, then you would become a kind of that is a kind of quack judge, for example. So do not be a quack judge. Do not be a quack alim. Do not be a quack, that is talib ilmin. Do not be in such a way. So a good failure, that is a good failure, is a kind of failure of which a person would get into without listening, without viewing, without weighing matters on top of the scales. So you have to, that is, know the parameters. You have to know the differences, and that's the reason why even in mathematics we have addition, we have subtraction, we have division, we have multiplication. In something that you need to utilize addition, if you use multiplication, you will not get the absolute value, you will not get the expected result. And that's how it is. Yes, there are differences in the ibadat, in the adat also. Like it happens some years back, I went to a particular masjid. The imam that will lead people in the prayer, he come with what we know as ma'awiz, for example, ma'awiz. So in other part of the globe, if you come to the masjid with ma'awiz, people will begin to look at you. They would define you in another way. Those that are living in some other part of the globe, they know what I mean. Usually ma'awiz in other culture, women are the ones that are using ma'awiz. the males are not to use ma'awiz, and in other culture the males are the ones using ma'awiz, and if a woman uses ma'awiz, it would become a shame on her, for example. And in other cultures, both the women and that is the females and the males, they use ma'awiz. In other culture it is for the males, in other cultures it is for the females. So that's how we should know the differences. Otherwise you would judge someone in such a manner that he is not deserved to be judged on such a way, and a kind of a zulm can occur, oppression, you oppressed him, for example, you misunderstood him. So there is need for the clarification, clearance, and that is explanation of the misconception and the misunderstanding. So to avoid misunderstanding, you must to listen before you judge. And that's why even to a book, you cannot judge a book from the cover. Do not judge a book from its cover. You have to study from book that is cover to cover, from that is the preface, from the introduction, from the contents. You have to go through the paragraphs, the sentence one after the other before you make a judgment. As these days these issues are happening between the Tullab al-Ilm. Someone would mention, this is mentioned in the book of so person, or from the book of a particular author, and if you check, it is not there. Or even if it is there, the sentence that he mentioned is mentioning about something that is totally different, with what the other person is trying to highlight. So that's it. Before you judge someone, you have to listen, you have to know him first, and that's it. Otherwise we would be having so many problems of which we will not be able to solve it. And that's why in so many concepts, so Allahul Musta'an. So the wisdom behind the method of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in establishing that particular sentence is for us to understand the differences between this and that, and that's it. لذا فإنه نهى لذا فإنه نهى أن تقدم شهر رمضان بصيام يوم أو يومين. And with this he decided to warn, he warned أن تقدم شهر رمضان بصيام يوم أو يومين, for you to fast the month of Ramadan with a fasting of a single day or 2 days, for you to perform the fasting of the month of Ramadan in a manner that you perform a day fasting or 2 days fasting before the month of Ramadan. So you have to give a kind of area, a kind of distance. You can give even that is a week distance in order to avoid that, because it is based on the moon sighting, and the moon sighting, as we know, it is based on the authorities, and also it is a kind of a responsibility to each and everyone. If you see it, if you observe the moon by your naked eye, then it becomes a kind of rule upon you. So to have a confirmation, to have a strong, that is a rule, you can attribute that to a particular authority. So, and these are the issues related to ibadat, some related to obligations. If you play with it, you may fall into some of the consequences. So that's why it's better to rely upon an authentic authority. So, and that's it. So in any issue, you should know, you should differentiate between voluntary and that is mandatory. Allahul Musta'an. So he says that أو نحو ذلك, or similar to that, ليكون مفطرا مستعدا لصيام شهر رمضان, for a person to become a person that is having a relief, so as to perform the month of Ramadan like if you said mufattiran, someone that he is not performing the fast, so he should be in that condition before the month of Ramadan, at least for 2 days prior to the month of Ramadan, or a day prior to the month of Ramadan. So this is a kind of preparation. For example, I think last year I have, or last 2 years, even last 5 years, I have given a session related to the preparations the month of Ramadan. As we know, that's how the Mashayikh are, and that's how the righteous predecessors are. Some of the righteous predecessors, it was reported that they used to mention Allahumma ballighna Ramadana bil amni wal iman. So these are just a kind of preparation or a kind of notification. So Allahul Musta'an. So these are some of the precautions that someone should take before the month of Ramadan. Although we are within the month, so this is a kind of issue that you should know. If you did not follow these protocols, so you would be able to understand that you made a mistake. So you should try as such to solve before, that is the next Shahri Ramadan, before the Ramadan al-Qadim, for example. So what we are to understand here, he says that إلا من كان له عادة من صوم يوم كيوم الخميس إلا من كان له عادة من صوم إلا من كان له عادة من صوم, except for the person that he is in the condition of habitual fasting, a person that is fasting habitually, كيوم الخميس أو الاثنين أو قضاء تضايق وقته, like the fasting of Thursday, Monday, or a kind of disbursement that the time of that disbursement, the period of it get constricted. So suppose if you were in a kind of habitual fasting, normally before the month of Ramadan you used to perform the fasting of Thursday and Monday. So suppose 2 days before Ramadan it is Thursday or Monday. So if you perform the fasting of that day, there is no problem with that. And likewise, if there is a kind of disbursement of the previous month of Ramadan on you, and you are not able to disburse that unless 2 days prior to the month of Ramadan, maybe you have accomplished so many days, for example, what left for you is just a fasting of a single day to disburse the previous fasting, or 2 days. So you can just perform that in order to accomplish your disbursement, because that it is also wajib, and the fasting of the month of Ramadan is also wajib. So these are some of the that is protocols, and that's the reason even the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, as how he reported, as how the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين. And also from the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, of which this hadith, the previous hadith, is the one that we are discussing upon, the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. She said that at times I used to have a kind of disbursement, and I used to have a kind of disbursement of the previous Ramadan, but I'm not able to disburse that unless in the month of Sha'ban, a month prior to the month of Ramadan. So if you miss a chance of the previous 10 months, so in the last one, in the 11th month, that is the month of Sha'ban, you can take the advantage to disburse that, even if it is a day or 2 days before the month of Ramadan. It is better, unless there are some of the fatwa of the ulama, they said you can, that is delay that till after you accomplish the month of Ramadan. Even if you accomplish the month of Ramadan, you have to accomplish the disbursement, you have to perform the disbursement after the days of Eid, meaning after the day of Eid. Do not do it just after that is the Eid. Just give a kind of take a respite, just have a relief for 2 or 3 days, for example, then you disburse the previous fasting. Or if it is a fasting of a war, for example, Siyamun Nazr. So these are some of the issues that we should try as such to understand. So that's what he is trying to, that's what he highlighted. And he says also, أو نذر لزمه أو نذر لزمه, a kind of nazar, a kind of vow that he has already done, like him saying that, oh God, if you give me this, I would perform the fasting of so amount of days. Maybe I would perform 3 days fasting or 10 days if you give me this, if you bless me with this. So this is how it is. It is a nazar, for example. It is part of ibadah. It is also part of tawheed, for you to accomplish that, for you to make the nazar. Do not make a nazar upon a particular being. You have to do it with respect to that is divinity, and that's one of the issues that we should try as such to understand in this aspect. فَلْيَصُمْهُ لِأَنَّهُ تَعَلَّقَ بِسَبَبِهِ. So he shall perform the fasting because it is related with a condition, the condition of that. بِسَبَبٍ تَعَلَّقَ بِهِ, with a kind of reason that is related to that. So an-nazr is a reason. Disbursement of order for that is the previous Ramadan is also a reason, and voluntary fasting of Thursday and Monday is also a reason. So he says also, بخلاف نفل الصيام المتعلق بأقل ما فيه الكراهة. Beside the voluntary one, that is the voluntary fasting, that it contains something of negligible, something that is of negligible, of which a kind of karaha can be. What is karaha? Karaha is a kind of declamation of warning, meaning something is not approved. So if there is a kind of declamation that this is not to be done, so if you do it, then you made a wrong analysis of you considering something that is something to be done, and it is not something that you're supposed to do because there is karaha in it. So بخلاف نفل الصيام, beside the voluntary fasting, that is the voluntary aspect of fasting, al-mutlaq, the definite voluntary fasting, like if you wish, you would just perform the fasting, for example, just based on your wish and desires. فأقل ما فيه الكراهة, the most negligible hukum, the most smallest concern in it is al-karaha, warning, do not do it. Like for you, like for example, to wish to perform or to desire to perform the fasting of like just to perform the fasting a day or for 2 days before the month of Ramadan. So this is karaha. If not, to consider it al-ma'asi, it would be a sin, or to the lowest level as a warning. So if something is being warned, definitely there would be consequences. Maybe there would be punishment on that. So in terms of hukum, there are 2 limitations. There is higher limit and the lower limit. So on this, the higher limit, it is something that is considered as al-ma'asi, and to the lower limit is al-karah. So it's either you take it as al-ma'asiyah or you take it as makruh. So something that is forbidden or something that is reprehensible, for example, meaning you are deserved not to do, but if you do it, there is no sin on you because of the reason you just do something of ibadah, but you made the ibadah in a wrong period of time. So these are some of the points that we should try as such to understand. So by this we move further. ما يؤخذ من الحديث, the lessons that we can derive from the hadith, the lessons that you can derive from the hadith. النهي أن تقدم رمضان بصيام يوم أو يومين. النهي أن تقدم شهر رمضان بصيام يوم أو يومين. Warning, for you to pre-fast the month of Ramadan by the fasting of a day or 2 days. الرخصة في ذلك, second lesson that we can derive also, الرخصة في ذلك لمن صادف قبل رمضان له عادة صيام. الرخصة في ذلك, a kind of excuse in that, meaning excuse has been given in such condition. لمن صادف قبل رمضان له عادة صيام, of what it arrived to him unexpectedly, the kind of habit, the kind of habitual act of fasting that he was doing before the month of Ramadan. So if a person is in a kind of condition that he was performing the fasting of Thursday or Monday habitually, then momentarily a Thursday fasting arrived a day or 2 days before Ramadan, so if he performed the fasting of that Thursday or Monday, there is no blame on such person. كيوم الخميس والاثنين, كيوم الخميس أو يوم الاثنين, like the day, like the Thursday and Monday. We have already discussed on this. من حكمة ذلك, part of the wisdom on that, من حكمة ذلك, part of the wisdom on that, Allahu Alam, the Almighty knows the best. تمييز فرائض العبادات من نوافلها, differentiating the forms of ibadah من نوافلها from the voluntary one. So in this there is a lesson also on how to differentiate between other forms of ibadah, the obligatory ones and the voluntary ones. والاستعداد لرمضان بنشاط ورغبة, and also the way to prepare for the month of Ramadan, to prepare yourself for the month of Ramadan in happiness and wishes, meaning you would be happy. In order to be happy, in order to free all those kind of mental disorders, mental health, you should as such to have good mental health before the month of Ramadan. So even the neurologist, they give this kind of advice. For example, the neuroscientists, they give this kind of advice of having good mental health in the Ramadan, for you to start Ramadan with good mental health. Yes, we know there are a lot of issues with regards to depression and other issues with anxiety, but try as such to eradicate that before that is the month of Ramadan. So that's one of the issues that we would be able to understand here. So be happy and develop wishes that you would accomplish. So that is a task in the month of Ramadan, maybe of the act of ibadah or some of the issues related to your normal routine. So it's a kind of month that will help you to boost your energy in doing like so many things. For example, like normally in the month of Ramadan, we do constriction of the timing, but it is a month that I used to benefit from of writing so many articles, giving so many sessions, that is accomplishing so many tasks with respect to academics and with respect to other issues. So that's one of the issues that we should try as such to benefit from, and that's what we would understand from that is the hadith. وليكون الصيام شعار ذلك الشهر الفاضل المميز به, and also the fasting should be one of the slogan of that month that would be identified with it. So as-siyam, fasting, is a slogan that the month is being identified with. So as the fasting should be the slogan for the month to identify the month with. Meaning Ramadan, whenever you talk about Ramadan, everyone knows it's a month of fasting. Allahul Musta'an. There is one thing that you should understand, or that I realize, whenever the month of Ramadan is coming, even to some of my colleagues, Allahul Musta'an, or my classmates, for example, or some other people, that they come, Allah understand, some I don't even know from which kind of locus of faith they are, but they said, this is month of Ramadan, are you fasting or 2 days or 1 day before the month of Ramadan? Allah understand. So you see different people they understand the month of Ramadan. But one thing that I dislike always is that you should not make a decision for me. For example, yes, I know that I want to perform the month of Ramadan, but you don't know my task, for example. You don't know my daily routine, for example. You don't know what I'm doing. Do not decide for me. I have my freedom. The civil law has given me the freedom, and the divine law also has given me the freedom of choice. So do not. These are some of the issues. People decide for people. So do not decide for others unless you know some of the issues. You have to know. You have to make decision based upon knowledge. Based upon knowledge. You have to know the classification of rulings before you decide, before you judge. And that's what I have discussed previously related to the issue of making judgment or making decisions. And these are the problems of our today's era. People judge others. People decide for others. Allahul Musta'an. So give a chance to a person to express himself. Listen from him before you judge. And that's one of the issues. It happens to many people. It is a lesson. So Allahul Musta'an. So before it reaches you, try as such to have a foundational knowledge on the issues before that is making a kind of adjudication or a kind of enunciation or commentary on something or on a person, most especially in the month of Ramadan. A single commentary, a simple speech can dismantle all the act of ibadah that you have done. Someone would be surprised how a single utterances, or for example something that you can utter, or a single word or a single kalma can dismantle, can disintegrate all your act of ibadah. Yes, indeed, make a ridda. A single word of ridda can, not even the act of ibadah, your iman. You will lose your iman by a single word, and likewise even beside that. And that's why even to those individuals, Allah mentioned كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم يقولون إلا كذبا. So gigantic is the word, meaning evil. The evil in the word is so gigantic that they ought. The word that is coming from their mouth is so evil. يقولون إلا كذبا. Nothing they say but lie. So a single lie that you would say or that you would utter about the personality of a person or someone can disintegrate all your good deeds. So try as such to avoid. Try as such. Allah Musta'an. Focused on your development. Develop yourself. And if you realize that someone is uplifted above your level, don't try to draw him down, or for example to criticize him, or to in a manner that he is not to be criticized, or for example to blackmail him, for example. Allah Musta'an. You have the mouth, he has the mouth. You have the pen, he has the pen. You have the platform, he has the platform. You have the people, he has the people. Allah Musta'an. So we have to understand some of the issues with respect to the deen. Allah Musta'an. Al-Hadith al-Thani, the second hadith of which we are going to discuss on it further. So these are the lessons that Ibn Bassam has already made the commentary on them. So what I would like to add here is that according to him, if you have a particular voluntary fasting which is prior to the month of Ramadan with 2 days or a single day, you can do it, but it will be in form of karaha, because there is a reason entitled with that. So this is one of the segment. If you look in other frequencies, there are other mashayikh, there are other righteous predecessors of whom they hearken with the literal statement لا تقدموا. Since that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said la, so they consider that lamun nahiya, la an-nahiya, or la an-nafiya. So they said lamun, that lamun is an-nahiya, it's for warning. So if a warning comes, it may be something that is totally condemned, something that is totally forbidden, and it can be a warning of karaha. So some of the ulama, they went with an-nahi, that is an-nahyu or an-nahyi, and some of the ulama, they went with the karaha, meaning the hukum is, the issue is manhiyun, and the issue is makruhun, manhiyan or makruhan. So for each you take, there are issues on it. If it is makruhan, something that you are not supposed to do it, if you do it, there is no blame on you, but you are not supposed to. Preferably you should not do it. And if it is manhiyun or manhiyan, means something that is totally forbidden, so if you do it, you would be recorded with a sin. So, and majority of the righteous predecessors, they consider that lamun, la taqaddamu, as lamun an-nahiya. Although Ibn Bassam did not make a decision, meaning that this is his own opinion, he just derived the lessons and some of the commentaries. Although the commentaries and the lessons derived are from his words, but the idea may not be from his own personal idea. So for him to make, that is a judgment, he is qualified, he is competent to do it. Allah musta'an. So if you go, like for example the hukum or the fatwa of some of the ulama of this century, like Sheikh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymin, bin Baz, Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, all these ulama, for example Sheikh Ubayd bin Abdullahil Jabiri, Ahmad al-Najmi, all this, you would see their fatwa is related to these two limitations, higher limit and the lower limit, either al-nahyu or al-karaha. So al-amru bayn al-nahyi wal-karaha, but which one is the most strongest is the one that went with al-nahyu, and that's it, even to the ulama of the four mazahib. So this hadith was narrated by Imam al-Bukhari and also Imam Muslim. Beside Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim, there are other, that is, narrators. If we say this hadith is narrated by Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih or Imam Muslim in his Sahih, meaning there is no any shadow of a doubt that the hadith is authentic, is Sahih. So beside this, Imam Abi Dawood, Imam al-Tirmidhi, Imam al-Darimi narrated the hadith also in his Sunan. Imam Ibn Majah also, likewise Imam al-Tabarani in his Mu'jam, he narrated that. Imam al-Zaylai also. So many narrators narrated the hadith. The hadith is an authentic one. So لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم أو يومين. It came in other, that is other words also. لا تقدموا رمضان بصيام يوم أو يومين. لا تقدموا شهر رمضان بصيام يوم أو يومين, with some additions, with some subtraction of, that is alphabets or words. So that's how, but the meaning is the same. So if you add the ta'ul mudari'ah, you are emphasizing to present tense, but the hadith is in form of future tense. لا تقدموا, with the erase of ta'ul mudari'ah. So with this few explanation, I would like to stop here. If there is any, that is, doubt, any question, you can, that is forward the session, or the like for example the question in the platform that we are using for like for example Q&A and other issues. For example, as I mentioned for the fatwa, even this equation related to the fatwa, even the greater, that is ulama, they are abstaining, they are like given like a tawadu, for example, on it. If like Suhaimi, for example, he would have tawadu with fatwa, so how are you to give fatwa, for example? So you should try as much to abstain from fatwa, unless if there is no any chance and you have the knowledge, you are capable, you have the capabilities to do or to issue the fatwa. Try as much to uplift the issue to the, that is to the senior ulama, to the mashayikh, or to the people that are ashab, that is ashab al-ilm, for example, or ulil ilm, for example, ashab al-ilm wa nuha, for example. Even in other issues, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned liyaliyali minkum ulil ahlami wa nuha. Allah al-musta'an, sensible individuals, the wise men, for example. I mean the ulama, the people of knowledge. I don't mean like the wise men of today's, for example. Yes, there are issues that they are the ahluhu, and there are the issues that are related to the first theology, issues of aqidah, tawheed, issue with respect to the condition of the ummah. You have to uplift to the, that is senior mashayikh, for example. So you can send the question in Slido and all our softwares and apps that we used to utilize in, that is receiving questions, and Allah al-Musta'an, and the session that I also deliver with respect to the matters that are related to the Q&A. Allah al-Musta'an, you know, it is the month of Ramadan, no time for appropriate sleeping, for example, like the hours are constricted. Allah al-Musta'an, these are the ways that someone is not deserved to mention, for example. But if for example it happens that you must mention, it is a reason, so you can tell people there is no problem with that. As I mentioned, fasting is secrecy, for example. It is a kind of privacy between you and your maker. So mentioning act of ibadah to publicize it or something like that can nullify or can decrease the amount of reward you would get, for example. So we should try as such to humble ourselves, for example. Wallah al-Musta'an. As I mentioned, if the ulama, the mashayikh, they are humble in terms of issuing fatwa, so we should also try as such to be humble on that also. Allah al-Musta'an. There are some of the issues that you know by yourself, you have the knowledge, you are capable, that is to do that. Allah al-Musta'an. And you know there are some issues that you lack the knowledge, so try as such not to go into that, otherwise you would show your jahl on that. Allah al-Musta'an. We ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward us in whatsoever we have discussed, and we should also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to erase any wrong statement that come within our discussion. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin, wa subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.